Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to give you the most comprehensive ENARSI exam review on YouTube, of course without violating the NDA. Let's get started. Now this video is going to be a little bit longer because I really have a lot to talk about and a lot of tips to share with you. First, I'm going to talk about how long it took me to get ready for this exam. Then I'll talk about what I thought about the exam itself, and then I'll share with you my tips on how I passed on the first attempt and how you can as well. I've got a list here in front of me so I can remember to hit on each thing I wanted to mention, and I guess we'll just get into it. How long did it take me? That's the first thing I'll address. The short answer is it took me 3 to 6 months, but here's the full story. This is kind of going to run through my entire background actually, but I think it's helpful to run through this so you can see what I had before I decided to start studying. So I decided to start studying networking just in general for the first time in January 2018. This is when I signed up to finish the last 2 years of my bachelor's degree, and I started to read the CCNA material. I was brand new to IT, so I ended up picking up and putting down the CCNA books a lot. I didn't do enough Cisco in my jobs during college and after college or in college, so I ended up getting distracted. What I did during that time was get all 3 of the CompTIA certs, so A+, Net+, Sec+, and I was working for a small to medium-sized MSP doing lots of Windows admin type stuff. So I always knew I wanted to transition to networking and focus on Cisco, but I just kept reading it and putting it down. I actually let I signed up for the CCNA, the ICND 1. I actually let the date go by. I went to reschedule it and it had already passed. But anyway, it's another story. So I graduated in May 2019. I worked some, and then I got hired at Cisco as a TAC engineer in January 2020. By February 2020, I had passed the CCNA composite exam right before the whole cert apocalypse when everything changed. So I did get the old CCNA, not the new one. And right after that, I immediately started studying for Encore because looking at the exam objectives, I felt this is really not much deeper than the CCNA, just a little bit more into the protocols and a lot of the SD access and wireless. I have another video on that, so check the cards or the description, and that'll tell you all about what I think about the Encore exam. So May 2020 is when I ended up passing the Encore. At first, I wasn't interested in ENARSI at all, saying like, I'll just continue my studies with my eyes on CCIE. You have CCIE, who cares if you have CCNP? So I didn't really plan to get it. And I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I'll get some of the automation stuff because certain exams for that get you kind of two in one. You'll get the specialization and then half of the DevNet. So I was thinking about doing that and still on my radar. But at the end of April, I actually deployed to my TAC team, which is the data center routing and switching team. During part of the training for that team, we went very deep into studying the big 3 routing protocols. So by that, I mean OSPF, EIGRP, and BGP. And so at that point, I decided the overlap was so much. So I was going so deep into these routing protocols and then looking at the objectives of ENARSI, which we'll pull up here in a little bit. I realized, hey, this overlaps so much. I might as well just go ahead and take that exam to finish up my CCNP. So this is when my ENARSI focused study began, and this was right around the time of late June or early July. Now keep in mind, I say that ENARSI focused studying started then, but the entire time since January, February, I have been just going crazy on studying the fundamentals of networking and all the protocols. So while I wasn't studying with ENARSI in mind, I was still studying. So don't let that guide you or something. So after all of this, I passed ENARSI on Thursday, August 13th, 2020. So that was a long story, but I think it's important to paint the entire picture because I could tell you like, oh yeah, I decided to start studying for ENARSI in, June and got it in August, but that doesn't really tell you the whole thing. So that's my story. That's how long it took me. Yeah. Now, my thoughts on the exam itself. There are definitely some time-consuming questions on this exam. I am a very fast test taker. In school, throughout my entire school career, I was always the first or the second done. I finished Encore with 90 minutes left, and sometimes on the ENARSI, I thought I was going to run out of time. This is the first exam where I had to look up at the time and think about how many questions I had taken and how many I had left, and really look at my pacing. And I have never had this concern. I know this is a huge concern for a lot of people. I have never worried about that on any exam that I ever took. And this one was the first one where I was like, wow, I need to really manage my time and pay attention to this. So if you're bad at time and management, the only suggestion I have for you is know every objective, because the only way to get through it quickly is to know it enough to look and find the answer quickly. So if you're bad with time pressure, this is going to be a big challenge for you on that exam. Another thing I'll say is every single bullet point is hit from the objectives. That's kind of like, oh, okay, duh, that's why they tell you they're the objectives. But stuff you think they won't ask you that much about, they will. So it's very, very service heavy. I almost say that it should be called advanced services and routing. It's not really true. The weighting that they tell you on the website is pretty accurate. And just don't do like I did and be like, they're not really good. This is advanced routing. It's going to be mostly routing stuff, and they're not really going to ask that much about that other stuff and what they do. It'll be high level. No, it's advanced routing and advanced services. It's not advanced routing and a little bit of no, like know it all. Know all of it. Very important. Continuing on that point, I went crazy deep into routing protocols, like the function of them and, you know, how they interact and all this kind of stuff. And they didn't hit on that as hard as I thought they would. Now, that knowledge is going to serve me for the rest of my life and for the rest of my career. So, and I'll touch on this towards the end of the video also. Don't study to pass the test, study for the knowledge. But of course, when you're trying to pass a test, I mean, there's to an extent you're studying to pass a test. More on this later. But my main point is this is advanced routing, right? It's not, you know, what is the hello time? You need to know that. It may or may not be on the exam, but this is getting into the advanced stuff. They already expect you. Encore is more about, you know, how many packet types does OSPF use to communicate? What is an administrative distance? What is a metric? Like all of this kind of stuff. Like this is like, okay, we know you know that. We're going to start asking you deeper into the protocol. So where I made some of a mistake is I should have made a little bit more complex labs. Don't get me wrong. I did a lot of complex labbing, but I should have made a few more labs, and I'll, again, more on this when I start talking about study tools. There's another point I want to hit on. The next thing I want to mention, there's a section 4 in the back of every official certification guide. I'll pull these up later. You can see them here, 2 of the books I use. But anyway, they tell you in these books, read the question. Again, it seems like common sense, you know, but the way we are now, we're programmed to scan quickly. We scan emails, we scan text, we scan everything, and we skim. And They say in the certification books, you know, some of the biggest reasons for people failing is not understanding what the question was actually asking or choosing the wrong answer because they didn't read it enough. And what I want to say is that I felt the Encore as well as the CCNA were very straightforward. There was not a lot of trickery. Of course, you had to read the question and know, okay, this is what they're asking and this is what the answer should be. But I didn't feel like anything was really worded in a way that was like, if we're trying to trick you and if you don't read this all the way, you're going to pick the wrong answer because you're rushing. Also, the answers themselves, you have to read the entire answer. Some of the stuff on this exam is going to be, it's not just a couple lines of output. You know, you need to decipher the output, decipher what exactly the question is asking for, and then carefully read the commands as well as every argument with the command, because there might be something where it's like, okay, 2 of these answers are obviously wrong. And if you just look real quick, either one of the remaining 2 could be right. But if you don't look at the order of the arguments, you made a mistake. So very, very, very important to take your time, read the question once, read it twice, and check over the answers in a very detailed way. This was more important on this exam than it has been on any other certification exam I've taken. My weakest section of the exam was infrastructure security. And for me personally, that was because I didn't go deep enough into COP. I didn't practice enough with COP. I didn't study COP enough. COP is listed as an objective, so I'm not telling you anything that's not publicly available. The weighting, like I said, is accurate based on what they tell you on the website. But I'm just saying, I looked at some of this stuff and was like, they asked you some basic questions about this, and they're not going to go deep into it. This exam is going to be all about routing. Look at the objectives, look at the percentages, know every bullet point. That's all I can say. Now, I will tell you about how I passed on my first try and what study resources did I use. First of all, ENARSI Official Certification Guide. This is a great book to pass the ENARSI exam. You read the intro, it says the main goal of the book is to pass the exam, and that is true. Pay very close attention to the trouble tickets in that book. Every chapter is great. It covers, again, like I said in the Encore book, people hate these books. Oh, they make mistakes this, they do that, there's 30 errata, and it's blah, 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 you know, all this stuff. This isn't the book you buy that you want to have as the go-to in-depth reference on these protocols, the authoritative source on the no, these are the books you go to when you want to pass the exam. Now, you don't want to just pass exams and then get in interviews or get in situations where you don't know how to answer, and you're not studying just to pass a test. Of course, you're studying for knowledge, but at the same time, you are studying to pass a test. More on this later. But I just want to say that that book is great. That was, again, my main resource as far as what is the depth of each of these things I need to know to pass the exam. Because any one of these bullet points you see on the objectives, and I'll pull them up now. This is the heaviest section, the layer 3 text, so I've just got that one pulled up. But read all of them, of course. Again, I've always said this, but just read every bullet point and know each part of every bullet point. But anything on here, you can go infinitely deep into it, but there's only a certain level of depth you need to go to in the exam. We're all trying to be effective. We're all trying to use our time the most effectively. We all want to pass as fast as possible and all these different things. So book is great for that. In addition to the ENARSI official certification guide, this was the first time that I have started to use ANKI. ANKI is a free program you can download to help you build flashcards and flashcard decks to use the spaced repetition method of learning. My method of approaching problems is often, understand the problem, gather everything you need for that, and then search and find the answer because you have a good searching ability and a good understanding of what the problem is, so you know what to look for. And you have a base knowledge of many different things. So you say, okay, I remember basically how that works. I need to understand it deeper for this particular problem. So I don't memorize a lot of information. For real life, that may be good or may be bad. There's pros and cons to that method. But for taking an exam, for memorizing things for a test, is horrible. So I realized, you know what? I can be on the command line and question mark things out. Oh yeah, I know I need to go to this configuration mode. I need to be in interface mode, and I can type the first part of the command, question mark tab, question mark tab. You don't have question mark and tab on the exam. So to help me memorize some things like, what sub configuration mode of name, DR, GRP do you change you redistribute from, these kind of things I used, not only labbing, because the more you implement it and the more you lab on it, you just remember, oh yeah, to do redistribution in name DIGRP is in the topology base subsection. But also ANKI, flashcards, extremely helpful. I'm going to use this for the rest of my life, for the rest of my career, to memorize things, because I'll just hit on this now. Taking an exam, getting a cert is great, but it's worthless for the real life. Worthless? No, of course not. It's an exaggeration there. They're great. I love certs. I'm going to keep getting them. They get you interviews. They build your, clout, or whatever you want to call it. They give you credibility. But when you're on the phone with the customer troubleshooting a problem, they don't call you up and say, hey, my entire network's down. Is it A, my administrative distance is too high on this protocol when I want this protocol to be the one that it chooses? Is it B, my subnet mask is too small? Is it C? No, it's just, hey, I'm down. Blah, 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 help me. So you need to study to know how to answer things when you don't have the answers in front of you. And so ANKI really helped me improve my, I don't know if you call it short-term memory or recall memory or whatever, but it really helps. So I'm going to use this not only for exams, but for things I need to know for my career. So I highly suggest that you look into the spaced repetition model. Download ANKI because it's free. Use Quizlet, whatever you want. Flashcards help me. Never really used them in my life before. Use them. And huge help. Tool number 3. Boson. Again, excellent resource. The difficulty of Boson in comparison to the actual exam, again, same as I said for Encore, right on par. Boson had a reputation before where the CCNA is much, much harder than the real CCNA. So the Boson CCNA is way harder than the real one. I personally don't feel that that's true for the Encore and for the ENARSI exams. I feel like they're right about on par. But what I will say is Boson did an excellent job in wording questions in the way where if you rush through it, you realize, oh, I knew that, but I rushed through that question. And if I would have just read it a little deeper, I would have got that right. As I mentioned before, extremely important on this exam. Another thing I'll say about Boson is they will ask you some stuff in the Boson when you'll go, you're not going to ask me about that. I don't see that on the objectives. Well, what does it say above the objectives? It says, we might ask you anything. These might not be a comprehensive list. My advice to you is if you come across something in Boson and you haven't seen it and you don't know it, look it up, learn it, memorize it, make flashcards out of it, understand why the right answer is the right answer, which Boson does an excellent job of giving you the links to the white papers where they found the answer and great explanations. Again, at first when I did the first two, I only did 2 of the practice exams of the Boson. And when I did them, I was like, man, this isn't going to be how the real exam is. You know, blah, blah, blah. Again, great resource, highly recommended. They don't sponsor me. I don't have an affiliate link for Boson. Just a great product and definitely recommend it. While we're on the subject of practice exams, the OCG comes with a few practice exams. And I'll say that those are great. Particularly some of the stuff they ask you in regards to both exams actually in this regard, but what they ask you in terms of, you know, redistribution, problems with redistribution, things like that. Really great practice, really great practice for life, really great practice for the exam. As you see, the objective 1.4 of layer 3 technologies is troubleshoot redistribution between any routing protocols and sources. So you definitely want to be able to do that, and both of these exams as well as the book are a great resource for that. Another book that I want to mention, this is Routing TCP IP. This is volume 1. Sadly, there's not BGP in this volume, but there is OSPF, EIGRP, and 4 and V6, and there's also a great section on redistribution in there. Now that was not a main resource for me. I bought that because I told you the exam guides are #1 objective, pass the exam. This is a deep dive into the real functionality and guts of those protocols. So I bought that to have as a reference and to use for my career. And when things were maybe not clear enough or they didn't go as deep as I wanted to go in the exam, I would pull up the same section in Routing TCP IP and kind of compare. And TCP IP also has an excellent section on redistribution and troubleshooting redistribution. So not a must-have, but a great addition to your library if you're looking for books to go deeper. The final thing that I want to mention that I used to pass this exam was, you guessed it, labbing. I used a mix of EVE-NG and Real Gear, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you have that can run iOS V, so the viral version of iOS, is going to be perfectly enough for you. It can do everything that you need it to do, from DMVPN to redistribution to AAA stuff, so on and so forth. One tip I will give you for labbing with either GNS or EVE-NG is hook that into your home network. I've also made a really introductory video to that, card or link in the description to that. And here's the reason why. I recommend that you spin up say a Windows server, right? And set that up to be like a Radius or a TACAX server and actually configure the AAA stuff. Short story, that's what I did. I hooked in EVE-NG to my home network, spun up a Windows Server 2019 VM, and configured it as a Radius server and configured Radius authentication on a router. And I ran into some problems. I think I'm going to make a video on this, so I don't want to give too much away about what the problem was. But long story short, I had to enable the debugs for the authentication on the router and figure out why my Radius wasn't authenticating right. This was extremely helpful on the exam. Probably the book has enough in there where you can read it and look at the outputs they give you in the book. But just doing it myself and actually using the debug output to solve a problem, extremely helpful on the exam. I'm a big, every video, oh, lab is king, lab. And again, this is what helped here. Labbing redistribution, route maps, prefix lists, tagging, all of these are listed in these objectives here. Extremely important. You need to know how to do that backwards and forwards. So the exam's going to give you, a bunch of output. You're going to have to decipher the output, then read the question and, say, okay, what do they want? And then look at 4 sets of answers, sometimes maybe more. And it's not just a one-liner answer. It's a configuration that you need to know. Like, and the only way you're going to know that fast enough is if you have done it enough times to know, no, this is how you set that up. So again, know these things, practice these things, set these things up, break them, fix them, come up with your own objectives. I'm thinking about coming up with some different labs and you know, do this in the way that, you know, X does Y and B does C and D ask F out on a date and, you know, all this kind of stuff. But really some of the best ways is just going in on your own and saying, well, if I want to do this, how would I do it? Because then you're forced to find the answer. And when you're forced to find the answer, rather than looking at examples in a book or something that I tell you, it internalizes way stronger. Another tip on this point is read the question first, maybe read it again so you fully understand it, then look at whatever they show you as output, and then read the answers. Read each answer once and then look again. And you know, it depends on what the question is, what the question type is, what it's asking you, and so on. But a lot of what these exams I feel are testing are not only your knowledge of the subject, but also your logical, you know, troubleshooting ability, your logical thinking ability, and your deductive reasoning and your attention to detail. All of these things I just mentioned are extremely important in the real world, because here's the thing. You might think, oh, it's so stupid on an exam to switch 2 arguments and, you know, one of the answers was wrong and one of the answers is right. They're just trying to trick me. Well, you make the wrong move on a hospital router and now you've got patient lives at risk. So that's a very extreme example, but it's a real example nonetheless. And attention to detail in this field is critical. Maybe you're not putting patient lives at risk, but you're down in the network and you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars a minute. I mean, again, very high extreme examples, but valid points nonetheless. So not only is the exam testing your knowledge, they're testing your ability to pay attention to detail and to logically work your way through something you maybe don't understand immediately. As a final note on labbing as a study resource, leave a comment, like this video, subscribe if you want me to make specific labs that will help you based off of these exam objectives that you see on screen. I need to know enough people are interested, because if I'm going to take the time to do it, it's going to take me many hours to create these labs, and I'm going to give it, you know, the best type of quality you can have in a lab. So just let me know if you're interested in that, and if enough people say they want it, then I'll think about building some of that stuff out. In conclusion, very happy to finally be a CCNP. I remember times when I have a dream board. Another thing I'll say real quick is, you know, your mind state is very important. Believe you can pass, see yourself passing, all this kind of stuff. Not going to get too into that in this video, but your mindset's very important. And what I was saying is, I remember times when I have a dream board and I used to Photoshop my name on the CCNA certificate. I found somebody's picture of somebody's CCNA online. I went and cut their name out and put my own on it. No, I wasn't trying to fake my exam. No, I never showed that to anybody. Don't come after me for that. But I wanted to see what I would see when I really got my exam. So it feels really surreal to come from, you know, Photoshopping my name on CCNA certificates to holding the real deal CCNP. And you can go through the same thing if you just put your mind to it. CCIE is still a goal of mine. But for now, I'm going to be really focused on some data center stuff, NXOS. As I mentioned earlier, that's the team that I'm on for my current role. So the enterprise track is so enterprise specific that I kind of want to start building my foundation on the Nexus platform. So I'll be focused on that for a while. You still count on enterprise type videos to come from me, as well as maybe some Nexus ones. Just, you know, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because good stuff's coming either way. I'm also going to be shifting a focus into some cloud stuff and some Python, because nobody wants to be a one-trick pony. Got to be real deep and something to be an expert, but also I'm just trying to stay abreast of what's going on in the industry. So be building up my Python and my cloud skills. And as a final note, I'll say I do have some affiliate links in the description for some of the books I used. If this video has helped you, if the channel has helped you, I would appreciate it if you buy through those links. I'll get a small kickback and it doesn't cost you any extra. So consider that if you'd like. And as a final closing note, I will say exams are great, certifications are great, but study for your life, study for your career. I said it once in this video, I'll say it again. When the customer is on the phone asking you questions, you're troubleshooting your own network or somebody else's network that's down, there is no pool of correct answers. There's only the knowledge that you have inside and the ability you have to analyze a problem and know what to search for to find the answer. So exams are great, certs are great, but they, in a way, don't really mean anything. So don't be too focused on just passing the exam, but at the same time, focus on passing the exam. I know that's kind of contradictory, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. And in conclusion, I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.